The needle hovered a centimeter from Corvin Vask's optic nerve, and he was smiling. That was the detail the technicians would replay 1,000 times in the weeks that followed. Not the alarms, not the shattered restraints, not the 17-meter crater where the Chamber of Judgment used to stand. Just a human, strapped into the galaxy's most feared interrogation device, smiling like he'd already won. Subject shows no fear response, the machine's operator reported. Voice cracking. Recalibrating. The Nol'tar Fear Engine had extracted confessions from war criminals, unraveled the minds of rebel generals, and broken 3 separate attempts at galactic conquest simply by making its subjects remember their worst terror until they screamed for mercy. In 400 years, it had never once failed. The needle recalibrated again. On the observation deck, High Inquisitor Thessa Mordul watched the output monitor spike red, then black, then something the sensors had never been designed to display. "That's not possible," she whispered. "The human, designation unknown, crime unknown, name whispered only as the Terran," opened his eyes. "My turn," he said. Every light in the chamber died at once. 3 days earlier, none of this had begun that way at all. The border station orbiting Keth-Vallis was not a place people came back from. Everyone in the Vondari Compact knew that. It was where the Compact sent the ones too dangerous to try, too valuable to execute, and too stubborn to break through ordinary means. Officially, it processed high-risk diplomatic irregularities. Unofficially, it was where the Fear Engine lived, and where careers, minds, and occasionally entire species resistance movements went to end. James Aldric had been mistaken for a courier. That was the joke of it. When Compact Marines stormed the medical relief shuttle Halcyon Mercy, they found 11 exhausted aid workers, 4 crates of vaccine stock, and 1 man in a stained gray jumpsuit calmly finishing a cup of recycled coffee. The Marines' commander, a broad-shouldered Kasathi named Dreg Voss, hadn't even bothered restraining him at first. "You're the medic," Voss had said. "Not a question." "Something like that," James answered. It was only later, after the vaccine crates were scanned, after someone noticed the shuttle's registry didn't match any known Terran relief consortium, after a junior officer found a service tattoo half hidden under James's collar, that the mood shifted. By then it was too late to ask questions politely. The Compact didn't do polite anyway. James was processed like cargo, shackled like cargo, and shipped to Keth-Vallis like cargo. He said nothing the entire 3-day transit, except once, to a frightened young guard who'd forgotten to feed the prisoners in the row. "You should eat something too. Long shift ahead of you." The guard had reported this exchange to his superiors as deeply unsettling, but nobody expected what the High Inquisitor found when she finally reviewed his intake file. Thessa Mordul had run the Fear Engine for 11 years. She'd broken warlords who'd slaughtered entire moons. She'd broken a Yearn matriarch who had, until that point, been considered psychologically unbreakable by 7 allied intelligence services. She did not get nervous. She got nervous reading James Aldric's file. Not because of what was in it, because of what wasn't. No service record, no biometric history predating 4 years ago. No family registry, no planetary origin confirmed beyond Sol system. Terran Federation, a species the Compact had only encountered at its fringes. A species most Compact citizens considered a curiosity, not a threat. "He's nobody," her aide, Pell, said, scrolling through the blank pages. "There's nothing here." "That's the problem," Thessa said. "Nobody doesn't get smuggled out of a war zone on a stolen Compact shuttle registry. Nobody doesn't sit in a holding cell for 3 days without asking a single question. Maybe he's just simple." Thessa looked at the security footage looping on her desk screen. James, calm, motionless, watching the corridor camera with an expression that was not fear, was not defiance, was something far more unsettling. Patience. "No." she said quietly. I don't think he's simple at all. That was when the council made its first mistake, overruling Thessa's recommendation for a full 6-month evaluation. The compact's regional overseer, a cost-conscious bureaucrat named Administrator Crix, ordered immediate processing through the Fear Engine. Public confidence in compact security had been shaken by a string of embarrassing rebel propaganda leaks. A clean, fast confession from a mysterious Terran operative would make excellent press. Break him, Crix ordered. Today. Thessa argued. Thessa was overruled. Thessa, against every professional instinct she had, walked James Aldric to the chamber of judgment herself. Last chance to talk, she told him, as the restraints locked around his wrists. Everyone talks eventually. It would be easier for both of us if you did it now. James studied her, not with hatred, not with fear, but with something almost like sympathy. You don't want to do this, he said. It's not my choice. It never is, he said. That's usually how it starts. The truth was, no one in that room understood what they were about to unleash. The Fear Engine worked by reaching directly into the subconscious, extracting the subject's deepest terror and projecting it back at them in perfect, inescapable detail. Drowning, immolation, the death of loved ones, the collapse of everything they'd built. It didn't just show subjects their fears, it made them relive them again and again until the mind broke and the mouth confessed everything just to make it stop. It had a 99.8% success rate. The remaining fraction of a percent were subjects who died before confessing. Never subjects who simply endured. Operator Van Solis initiated the sequence. The needle descended. James's pulse remained, according to the monitor, at a resting 58 beats per minute. Fear index rising, Van reported. 40%, 60, 90. Then the number didn't stop at 100. It kept climbing. Past every calibration limit the machine possessed, and the diagnostic panel began flashing a word the technicians had never seen it produce before. Inverted. What does that mean? Thessa demanded. Van's hands were shaking. I don't. The feedback's running backward. It's not extracting his fear anymore. Something's pushing into the machine. Asterisk. Nobody in that control room knew the Fear Engine had just met something it had never been designed to process. A mind that had already made peace with every terror it could conjure. James Aldric had buried his squad on 3 different worlds. He had watched a research outpost die in silence because evacuation would have cost more lives than it saved. He had made the calculations that haunted better men into early graves, and he had made them anyway, because someone had to. The Fear Engine searched his mind for something to weaponize and found only old grief, worn smooth by years of carrying it. There was nothing left there sharp enough to cut him, but there was something else in his mind. Something the machine, reaching deeper than it ever safely should, brushed against and recoiled from. A training discipline drilled into him across 4 years of Federation deep cover conditioning, designed for exactly this scenario. Not to resist the machine, to reprogram it. That was the moment everything changed. The chamber's lights guttered. Alarms shrieked through Keth-Vallis station. Van Solis was thrown backward from his console as it overloaded, and in the chaos, the restraints holding James Aldric, restraints rated to contain a Kasathi war brute, simply clicked open, as though someone had entered the correct code. Thessa drew her sidearm. Her hand was steady, her voice was not. Stand down. Now. James rose from the chair, rubbing his wrist, and for the first time looked genuinely apologetic. I did try to warn you, he said. Warn me of what? That machine of yours has been reading fear out of people for 400 years. He nodded at the ruined console, sparks still spitting from its housing. It's never had someone push data back. I just gave it something to remember me by. The lights across the entire station flickered. Not randomly, but in sequence, spelling something in old compact binary that Thessa recognized instantly, because it was the same code broadcast to every compact vessel during first contact rebuttals, a formal declaration. Not of war, of audit the truth stunned the entire sector before the hour was out. James Aldric was not a courier. He was not a smuggler. He was a Federation deep reconnaissance agent, embedded for 11 months to document the Fear Engine's use against political dissidents, evidence the compact had spent a decade insisting didn't exist. Every session, every scream, every confession extracted in that chamber had just been copied, encrypted, and broadcast to 11 independent oversight bodies across known space, using the engine's own transmission array against it. Administrator Crix's quick, clean confession had instead become the single largest leak of compact human rights violations in its history. Thessa lowered her weapon slowly. Around her, the station's automated systems continued reciting the audit declaration in binary, patient, and unstoppable, the last defiant flicker of a machine that had just been taught its first new trick in 400 years. "You could have told me," she said, "before I strapped you into that thing." Would you have believed me? She thought about it honestly. No. Then it worked exactly as it needed to. James held out his wrists, no longer restrained, in a gesture that was somehow more unsettling than any threat could have been. "For what it's worth, Inquisitor, I don't think you're a monster. I think you're someone who followed orders, because the alternative seemed impossible. I've met a lot of people like that. Most of them get a second chance once someone finally shows them it wasn't impossible after all." And that was the moment Thessa Mor'Dul made her choice. She held her sidearm a moment longer, then set it down on the console, beside the machine that had never failed and now never would again. "The escape pods are on Deck 6, she said quietly. "The old service corridor doesn't show on current schematics. Go before Crix sends actual soldiers instead of me." James studied her, and something in his exhausted eyes softened. "Thank you," he said, "not for this. For choosing it before you had to." He was gone before the first alarm, reinforcements arrived, vanished into a service duct with the calm efficiency of a man who had planned 6 exits before he'd ever stepped foot on that shuttle. Behind him, the Fear Engine sat dark and silent, its 4-century record broken not by force, not by violence, but by a species the galaxy had never bothered to fear. They would, from now on. Because the machine built to break every mind in the galaxy had finally met one it couldn't touch, and in trying, it had taught the whole compact something no torture chamber ever could. Some fears can't be extracted. They have to be earned. And humanity had already paid that price a long time ago.